Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Lima Ultra. This is a rather unique network-attached storage device, primarily because it doesn't come with any storage. You have to bring your own. So the way it works is it's got a gigabit Ethernet connection on one end here that you plug into your router. On the other end, you plug in a USB hard drive. So we've got this solid-state drive in a external enclosure that we're going to be connecting up. It supports USB 3, so you do get some decent speeds out of it. The price on this, though, is $129, which costs as much as a more full-featured network-attached storage device with a hard drive. So you have to make your own decision here as you watch this review to determine whether or not this might be worth your investment. Now, I do want to mention, in the interest of full disclosure, this came in free of charge from Lima. However, all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. Now, this is a second-generation product from Lima. They have another one out with a slower Ethernet port, a much slower USB port, and a much slower processor than what you're going to find in this one. The original sells for $99. That one began life as a Kickstarter, and they had a very rocky start in that they raised a lot of money, about $1.2 million. They had more than 12,000 backers on that project, but it took them almost 2 years to get the hardware out to the people that backed it initially, and a lot of those folks are still upset about what they ended up with, especially now that there's a new and improved product that is much, much better than the original, and I can see why they are upset, and rightfully so. This was not a good start for a startup, and I think probably things got away from them a little bit, although it looks like they're trying to correct that with this new product, and I hope the existing Kickstarter backers will be given some recognition for their contribution and their patience, because given what I know about the other product, this one is going to be a lot better, although still far from perfect. So very simple device though. All you got to do is plug power into it. We're going to connect up my hard drive and my network to it now, and I'm going to get this thing up on my network, and I'm going to show you how it works. All right, so we are up and running. My Lima is connected to an external hard drive, and of course, we've got the gigabit Ethernet going back to the internet. So we are now connected up. I'm on my Mac desktop here, and you can see that I have a Lima folder accessible to me. Now, one of the important things to note with this is that unlike other network-attached storage devices that when you have them plugged into your local network, all of your computers can see them without software, Lima requires software to be running on the computer, whether it's Mac or Windows, and I think there's a Linux beta also. That software has to be running in the background at all times for you to be able to access your Lima files. So I've got it running up here in my taskbar. It doesn't use all that much RAM, about 120 megabytes or so. Funny to say only 120 megabytes in 2017, but that is not a lot of memory if you have 4 or 8 gigs of RAM on your computer. But nonetheless, to access your files at any time, even if you're offline, you still need to have this Lima software running here in the background, kind of similar to what you might experience with Dropbox and other cloud services. Now you're going to see a notice here that my computer is running low on disk space, and I'm going to pop into the Lima preferences to show you what that means. So the Lima itself, as you can see, has 2.5 gigabytes of 240 gigabytes used. We have plenty of unused space available to us, but this requires some degree of local storage for it to work. So if I go over here to settings and over to advanced, you can see that by default, the caching that Lima requires will take up to 10% of my free disk space. And right now, I've got about 13 megabytes used up by that cache. And you can always clear it out just by clicking the clear button here, or you can set a hard limit to that amount, but it will always be storing things in the background that it uses to gain access to things a little faster. What's interesting, though, is that it doesn't always use the cache to access files offline, even if they might be stored in it. So you have to actually do an extra step to ensure that your files are offline if you're getting on a plane or something like that. And I'll show you that here in just a second. So what we're going to do, though, is just close out of this menu real quick. There isn't much more to see on that. And I'm going to take a file that is on my folder here on my main computer and copy it over to my Lima here. So I'm just going to say test and make a new folder, and then I'm going to grab this video file and just move it out of my Lon.TV directory and copy it over to the Lima. Now you saw how quickly that 42 megabyte file was transferred. That's because it was transferred into the cache. It didn't actually get to the Lima yet. It stores it locally in that cache, and then it syncs it up as time goes on. Usually it goes pretty quickly, especially when you're on your local network, but there is an intermediary step, and those files are going to be stored on your local computer first before they are synced up with the Lima and accessible to other devices on your network. But you can see here I can play that video file back here without any issue, and we are good to go, and we should be able to look at that on other devices. Now, if I want to make this available offline when I'm on a plane or something, I have to go here and select Keep Offline Version, And what that will do is copy it essentially into the computer here locally so that I can use it while I am offline. But that software, of course, still has to be up and running. So just some things to keep in mind. It will require some resident software, and it will be doing some things in the background, and it will take up some of your disk space to use it. Now, because of that caching issue, we're not able to do a real proper speed test, but we will do the next best thing, which is trying to get one of my Blu Ray MKV files, very high bitrate HD video, to play over the network. So our MacBook Air here is connected via Ethernet on Thunderbolt dock over here, and then we've got the Lima next to it, also connected to the network via Ethernet. I've got a Blu Ray MKV here of one of my daughter's videos here, and we'll just start playing it. Now, I should note, when I was testing this earlier, this crashed the Lima, so there is still some instability here with the product in its early days here, so it's not going to be a perfect experience for you. And once again, there's just a lot of layers going on here with the software running here and the Lima itself that create more complexity that might lead itself to sometimes having crashes and whatnot. But it does seem, when it doesn't crash, to work pretty well and can support one of these Blu-ray movies, which the prior version of the product could not do unless you first copied that huge file onto your local cache. So there is some improvement in speed here, at least from what I've been reading on the old product, and when it is up and running, you can do things like high bitrate video without a problem. Now, I should note, though, that if you are away from home, you would not be able to stream a file like this because it doesn't do any kind of video transcoding. So that's something where having a Plex server, which we've talked about a lot here on the channel, might be a good solution to be able to convert that video into something smaller so you can access it elsewhere. It's possible that you could probably access the Lima here via Plex, but I don't know if that's something you'll want to do, and that might be a better option for a network-attached storage device. So I would say, if you are planning to watch movies away from home, either load them up into an offline folder on your device first, or use smaller movies that won't take as much data on the upstream to get to you wherever you are. All right, so let's take a look now at the mobile app. This is running on my iPhone, but there is also an Android version that performs very similarly to this one. However, on the Android version, you'll see a little plus icon in the lower right-hand corner that will allow you to upload whatever file you want. Right now on iOS, they don't have an upload button in the app, so you can't select photos that you want to upload or videos from your photo roll like you can do on many other cloud applications just yet. You can upload the entire thing, but not one photo or one video. Hopefully they'll be adding that soon. That's one of the problems when you review products like I do, especially early in their life cycle. You don't get all the features just yet, so at some point they'll probably add that functionality to iOS, but right now, if you're on Android, you have a lot more flexibility as to what you can upload and gain access to as a result. But once the files are uploaded on a desktop computer, for example, you do have access to them. So for example, that folder we created just a second ago with our test video is in there, so we can get at that. They also did a pretty cool thing with the movies folder here. So if you look down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little icon for movies, and if I hit that, it actually found the metadata for that Frozen video we watched earlier, and I can click on that and watch that MKV on my phone. But note that this is not going to be doing any conversion like you might see on Plex or something. So if you're on a remote network, on your LTE network somewhere out of your home, you're not going to be able to watch the movie all that easily, but it does seem to work on mobile here pretty well when you've got the bandwidth to support larger files like that. And the video playback app also supports Chromecast. You do have the ability to toss it over to a TV if you wish. Now, I mentioned before that you can't add photos from your iPhone, but you can, if you're in an email application, send documents over. So I've got a PDF here of an upcoming Board of Education meeting. I'm going to just click on the upload button and go to import with Lima. And what that will do is pull up a Lima extension here, and I can decide where I want to put that. So maybe I'll stick it on the desktop folder here and hit choose folder, and that will copy that file over after I click save. A lot of steps involved with it, but the file does get over there, and if I go back to my Lima app and we go over to the desktop here, you can see that that file is available, and right now it is currently uploading that file from my phone over to the Lima on the network here. But again, because it uses that local cache, I can access it immediately, and then once it gets into that box, I can access it on my computers and other devices. So now let's get into some of the techie stuff here. So we've got the Lima, of course, using an external hard drive that is plugged in via USB, and one of the first things I was wondering is what happens to the hard drive when you plug it in, and surprisingly, it doesn't format the drive, and this drive is actually formatted for my Mac, and it just worked with it. There was no format involved. They didn't lose any of the data that was currently on the drive. However, all the data on the drive is invisible to the Lima. It creates its own folder. So then I thought, Well, if that's the case, maybe I can take the drive out and copy it over to my computer and see what those files look like. So what we're going to do here is just go over to my computer and hit the eject button here, and that will safely disconnect the drive from our Lima. And when that is done, I will take it out of the Lima and we will pop it into the computer. So you can see now it says that my Lima is disabled because the hard drive was ejected. I'm going to now take the drive out of the Lima here and plug it into my Mac, and we're going to see what we can find on there. All right, so I've got my drive plugged into my Mac here. It's still showing up as a Mac drive. In fact, I have a file that I placed on the drive before I even connected it to the Lima because I was curious to see what would happen to it. That file is still accessible to the computer, but that image is not accessible to the Lima because we didn't load it in through its software. Now, you're going to notice on here I have some hidden files. Now, on the Mac, by default, these things will not display, but I reconfigured my Mac to show me things. And everything that Lima is contained in this Lima folder. So you can see we've got about 2.5 gigabytes worth of data stored in that folder. And the problem, though, is that when you go into that folder, you don't have access to your stuff on your computer because it is all encrypted. That is often a good thing to prevent people you don't want to get your data getting it, but it also means you can't get it either when it's on your computer. So if we scroll through all this stuff here, you can see there's just a bunch of gibberish and a bunch of crazy folders. And there is one file up here somewhere, there we go, that is about 2.5 gigs, about 2.24 gigabytes. That, I believe, is our Blu Ray MKV file that I loaded on yesterday to test. I can't play it back because it is all encrypted, but that is how it stores its data. The other problem is that you can't back this up unless you do some kind of backup on your computer to get those files out, because everything is encrypted here. If you copy that folder over to another drive, I tried it earlier, the Lima won't recognize it. So it only pairs up with the drive that you initially connected to it with, and if you have any kind of drive corruption, your data is gone. So you need to come up with a way of backing this up with your computer. Otherwise, you're going to be relying on a single drive's reliability for your data. So as a backup tool, this is probably not recommended. However, what they did tell me is that if you bought a second Lima, even the prior generation Lima, and set it up somewhere in your home or over the internet, those Limas will keep each other in sync, but now you're doubling the cost and you're having to buy another hard drive. So this is really starting to stack up to be an expensive kind of proposition, whereas many NAS devices have some backup functionality built into them where you can at least connect an external hard drive to it and back up your data to that. On the Lima, your options are very limited here because this drive is not readable to anything unless you plug it into the Lima and access it through its software. Now, Lima does have a product roadmap on their website that details a lot of the features that they hope to add to the product over the next several weeks and months. But really, a lot of this stuff is already on other consumer network-attached storage devices, so you're not gaining all that much here. And the one feature that could have made this thing a killer device is the one that they didn't implement because they created this whole complicated bonding, essentially, of the external hard drive to the Lima, which is, it would have been great to have been able to load up a whole bunch of data via the USB cable on my computer very, very rapidly, maybe in 5 or 10 minutes to load several terabytes of data onto one of these SSDs, for example, plug it into the Lima, and then turn it into a network-attached storage device. But unfortunately, the way they engineered this thing, it doesn't work like that. You still have to push everything through the network, and with most consumers on wireless connections, this is a big source of frustration for many, many users of network-attached storage. They can't believe how long it takes to get the data loaded onto them, and this would have solved that problem and cut down that data load time substantially and done it in a way that I think a lot of consumers understand. Take the external hard drive out, plug it into your computer, move the files over, unplug it, plug it into the Lima, and off you go. Now, there is a feature that they are promising to add very shortly to the product that claims to do that, import a large amount of files to Lima rapidly, and it looks like it would allow the computer to work with the encryption on the drive to get that data over to it, and it's expected very shortly. So I did click on the follow link here, and we'll get an email notification when it's implemented, because I think that could be the game changer for this, is cutting down that transfer time. But if they don't solve the problem of being able to back up the data very easily without having to buy another Lima, I think we're still going to be back where we started from, because right now, if this drive fails or this Lima fails, your data's gone, and that's not an acceptable solution here for many consumers. I really think they need to come up with a way that you can more easily transport data back and forth between drives without having to buy another Lima to have automated backup put together, because it's kind of pointless to buy one of these expensive devices and then not have some kind of automated backup solution, because that is a standard standard feature across the board, even on low-cost NAS devices right now. So we're going to keep an eye on this. We're going to come back to it, but right now it's not something that I can recommend in its current form, but maybe when some of these rapid loading features are added, we'll take a second look. This is Lon Seidman. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.